Center at 107 First Avenue. The Board of Supervisors welcomes comments from the public during the time allowed for discussion. You are requested to approach the microphone, state your name for the record, and limit the time used to present your remarks in order that others may be given the opportunity to speak. The normal process on any agenda item is for the chairperson to read the item from the agenda. The board is given an opportunity to comment on the issue and or place a motion on the floor. An opportunity for discussion may be presented, at which time the board public may participate in a roll call vote will follow. Sherry, would you call the roll, please?
Thompson,
Yes?
Slosson,
Yes.
Patton,
Yes.
Okay. Would everybody please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Robert,
Okay, moving right along. Item 4 on our agenda this morning is approval of the agenda. Entertain motions on this item, please.
Mr. Chairman, I would move to approve the agenda as printed.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the agenda as printed. Any discussion or comments? There being none, roll call vote, please.
Thompson,
Yes.
Slosson.
Yes.
Patton,
Yes.
Item 2 on our agenda this morning, we have service awards. Tom Heil, the jailer, 20 years of service. Douglas Bausman, a court security office, 5 years of service. These gentlemen, I am assuming, are busy conducting their duties and aren't able to be here, but Sheriff, would you please extend our congratulations and thanks?
Yes, I will, Mr. Chair.
Do you have any comments you'd like to make on these two
Uh,
individuals?
Mr. Heil, he's put in 20 years of service, Marshall County in the jail division. He retired and he's should be finished this next month for vacation. So we commend him for his service to our sheriff's office. And then Mr. Bosman, he is our part-time security reserve officer. He's been instrumental in getting the courthouse security program going along with Deputy McAllister. So I commend him for his service to the courthouse security.
Now, if I remember right, is he an EMT or does he work in the ER
He
somewhere?
works for Uni Point as a respiratory therapist.
Okay.
So the last couple of years have been very busy for him. It's been his profession.
Well, I bet. Well, thank you. Moving right along, item 6 on our agenda this morning is the consent agenda. Approve the special session minutes of January 31st, 2022. Approve the claims of January 2022. Approve the regular minutes of February 1st, 2022. Approve the special session minutes of February 4th, 2022. And approve the special session minutes of February 8th, 2022. We're also approving the claims as audited and authorize the county auditor and recorder to issue payment of the same. The listings of claims paid at this meeting and all claims paid in the current month we've published at part of the first meeting the following month. We're also receiving the file receipt of the cost allocation plan report. This is a fiscal year 2021 cost allocation plan. Will result in a total reimbursement of approximately $36,324 for indirect cost recoveries regarding the local Department of Human Services office for fiscal year 2022 to 2023. We have some file of manure management plans on our agenda this morning. Eggers Farms ID 56995 2124 Eastman Avenue, State Center, Iowa, with changes. Marshall Ridge Farms LLC ID 60101 1131-A 245th Street, State Center, Iowa, with changes. And Edler Brothers Farms, Section 19, number 58296 at 1930 Gerhard Avenue, State Center. No changes made. Entertain motions on the end of the consent agenda, please.
Mr. Chair, I would make a motion to approve the consent agenda as printed.
Mr. Chair, I second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as printed. Any further discussion or corrections or comments? There being none, roll call vote, please.
Thompson,
Yes.
Lawson,
Yes.
Patton.
Yes.
Item 7 on our agenda this morning is to appoint Paul Varen to the Condemnation Commission through 12/31/2022. Entertain motions on this item.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we appoint Paul Verin to the Condemnation Commission. Or real estate, he's real estate, pardon me. Do we have to do all, and the rest have already been approved once, haven't they?
Yes, I think this one was slipped. Okay, we have a motion and a second to appoint Paul Varen to the Condemnation Commission representing the real estate salesperson. This is an individual that has knowledge of real estate in the area. And this, it should be noted that this appointment is on 2/1/2021 to replace an individual that has left the commission. Any further discussion or comments? Roll call vote, please.
Thompson,
Yes.
Lawson.
Yes.
Patton.
Yes.
Okay. Item number 8 on our agenda this morning was to approve the P25 radio project change order number 1 for $66,500.51. It's a generator and LP tank for Whitaker Farms at the St. Anthony site. This P25 project is scheduled to close in the fall of 2022. And this generator has a 1-year lead time, so it should be noted that the delivery and installation of this equipment will not prevent final acceptance of the radio network. Entertain motions on this item?
Can we talk about this for a second? So
You
we
betcha.
fully understand this. Nan, you were involved in this prior to this thing taking off here. This particular generator then is just for the Whitaker Farms.
Yes, we originally was going to do a larger generator, like 100. And they said splitting the two would make a shorter lead time.
I thought there was a problem with Raycom didn't want another generator tied onto
No,
this.
that is not the reason. It was due to the lead time. However, now this smaller unit also has a 53-week lead time.
So we gain nothing.
Other than the project gets to move forward, because without the generator, the smaller one on the site itself, it would be not operational.
Now, this was money that we borrowed. Is there enough money in that between the cost of the 2 generators to, is it gonna work out to
difference-
is it gonna be a net zero?
It's not quite a net zero, but it's very close, because we have to have 2 LP tanks. That
How
was-
close to a net zero is it, do you know?
I'm not sure.
Okay,
I
now,
was thinking, yeah, the second LP tank once I heard was $1,000.
So that's the only difference.
that's a used one.
The LP tank was closer to 5,000.
What's closer to 5 for
Yes.
new?
For this
For
year,
new.
for new.
Now, was there an LP tank for the hog house?
That's the one we're talking.
Yes, that's what we're talking about, because there'll
Okay.
be 2 LP tanks.
Now, this is what confuses me a little bit,
Okay,
because surely they have an LP tank for heating of that hog house. Why can't that be hooked onto the generator that they are going to be using?
I don't know, but they're not getting any rent for any of this. This is their rent payment. They are giving full easement and a road being built on their land with no compensation.
I understand that, but I think that if they got an LP tank, they could surely hook on that also. That would be our benefit, I understand,
Mhm.
but.
Well, it would be one less thing to sit there, that's for sure. I mean, nobody really wants 2 LP tanks sitting high on their land either.
Nothing else. It's another item to plow around.
Yeah, mow around and deal with, and
Are they going to want to build 2 LP tanks? You've already got one full
right.
for the heating.
Well, I just wonder, because this was never really talked over very well, I didn't think.
It was talked over at length at the meetings, but
I never thought about them tapping into their
I didn't
existing
either.
LP tank. Maybe there is some reason, bookwork wise that needs to be kept separate. I don't know. I wouldn't think so
I
either.
wouldn't
but-
think so.
No, I don't either. Steve, on your farm, you probably got several things hooked up to one tank.
We've got multiple tanks, that's for sure. Actually, no, we've got a separate tank for everything.
You do? Yeah. We got a lot of stuff hooked onto a tank.
Yeah, so that's more efficient. That's much more. efficient.
We got a dryer hooked onto it. We've got my generator hooked onto it. We've got a shop hooked onto it, all just that tank.
Yeah.
I just,
Is this something we could visit with them about?
well, I don't know. A $5,000 tank's a lot of money to be putting out there. And that's not even part of this.
Okay,
I'll see if I can find out.
It'd be nice if we could eliminate one of the tanks, but if there's a reason why we have to have it, I could understand.
I don't
that.
remember any reason being cited.
But with the long lead time we have on this in this project, I don't want to do anything to slow it down.
no, I don't.
Well, yeah, and
This will slow it
the
down.
tank has nothing to
But
do
the
with
tank
our
won't slow it
motion
down.
here. Yeah.
Well,
Well, the
Unless
problem
you-
is the free part of what he's
It's tied
doing
into
for
it,
us. He's
right.
not gonna get the, and I guess it could be approved pending a decision on that.
it sure would be nice if we could save the $5,000 with the extra tank and be able to
Can
tap
we-
them in.
I may know in the next few minutes.
Tell you what, shall we move on to another agenda item?
Yeah,
and
sounds
see-
good.
See if
See if
Whitaker gets
Justin-
back to
if
you.
Justin gets back to me.
Okay, let's just temporarily suspend item number 8 and pending if we get some information from Justin Whitaker and move on to item number 9, because there's probably going to be some substantial discussion here. This is review and possible approval of selected project expenditures recommended by the Marshall County ARPA Committee to be paid from the American Rescue Plan Act ARPA Fund, total of $1,542,467.57. These are projects that were recommended by the ARPA Committee meeting on 2/1 of 2022. First one on there is COVID sick time. Nan, can you speak to this, please?
Yes, when we ran the COVID sick time report, it omitted one department. It admitted or omitted secondary roads. So this is the secondary roads amount. 1,800
Okay,
and some odd dollars and cents.
I believe we should vote on each of these in their
And we
separate.
did approve the other remaining department items that were pulled, which was $3,300, I think.
Okay, but we're adding 1,852.
We're adding 1,800 to this. So,
Where's the 3,300 come from?
that was the other departments. I didn't, when we ran the report, it didn't pull secondary roads.
That was
This-
already approved.
It was already approved. We approved that 3374.24. You approved that August 31st of 21.
So we're just picking up one that we
Yes.
missed.
Mhm.
Okay,
Okay, I'll entertain motion on approving this line item.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we approve the $1,852.90 for a COVID sick time for the secondary road department.
I'll second.
And we have a second. We have a motion and a second to approve the COVID sick time for $1,852.90. Any further discussion or comments? Roll call vote, please, Sherry.
Thompson,
Yes,
Slosser.
Yes.
Patton,
Yes,
motion carries. Second item on here is the attorney mental health court for $229,000. We have Sarah Tupper here. Sarah, would you like to speak to this item, please?
Yes, I'd be happy to, Mr. Chairperson. So I'm sure you recall that previously the ARPA committee recommended that some funding go toward a substance abuse court with a mental health component. And since that time, I'm happy to report that the Enhanced Supervision Court, which is our drug court, received a federal grant that's going to fund drug court for 3 years, which is great news. Because of that, if the supervisors should take that item off the table and decide to fund it, the court could not accept that funding because of supplanting requirements. So the ARPA committee is recommending that $229,000 be allocated toward a standalone mental health court for a period of 1 year. And you should have some information about that proposal in your board packet, but it essentially would operate like a drug court. It's a multidisciplinary court. There would be individuals involved from the probation office, the county attorney's office. There'd be a judge running it. There would be a mental health practitioner. So there'd be a case manager. There'd be a clinician who would participate in staffings. There'd be a public defender involved, because if someone has to go before the court and run the risk of going to jail or prison, they're entitled to have an attorney representing them. And so all those individuals would be involved in the court. It would operate the same way. The court would use supervision, probation supervision, and immediate sanctions to encourage compliance. And the goal is to get individuals compliant with mental health treatment, help them with other needs such as housing, transportation, and allow them to be successful on probation and to be law abiding. And it works much like a drug court. So the funding that's proposed would pay the salary and benefits of the probation officer, who would be in many ways kind of running the court, except for the judge presiding over the court. It would pay the public defender contract, a mental health contract, which would include both the clinician who would attend the staffings, and it would also include a case manager, and that's something that's required for a mentally ill individual. They do have to have a case manager. And then the treatment costs to actually attend treatment should be paid by insurance, Medicaid, or CICS. So that's something that the court wouldn't have to fund. And then just like the drug court, the county attorney's office and the judge would participate as part of our normal duties. We wouldn't be requesting additional compensation. That's just something that we would do as part of our job. So I've been able to talk to individuals who would be involved in this. People are on board. They're ready to get this started. I think they see the benefit. I should also add that the funding would also go towards some client incentives and community resources. For example, people who need to get bus fares to get to their appointments. They might need some assistance with other things, food, things of that nature. So these mentally ill individuals have a lot of different areas in which they're struggling. So we see the proposed mental health court as being beneficial to Marshall County in a couple of different ways. First of all, it should result in a cost savings to the county. So this is an investment at the front end, but in the long term, it should result in a cost savings. There have been national studies that have been done on mental health courts, and admittedly, there haven't been as many studies as with drug courts, because drug courts have been around for a longer period of time. But these national studies have compared defendants in traditional courts with defendants in mental health courts. And the individuals in mental health courts had lower rates of reoffending. They had longer times in the community before they committed new offenses, and they also had fewer days of incarceration. I was able to talk to a couple of individuals who are already involved in mental health courts in the state of Iowa. I spoke with the person who runs the Scott County Mental Health Court in Davenport, and the prosecutor who runs the mental health court in Potawatomi County. And they've described having success with their programs. Potawatomi County in particular, I asked about recidivism rates. And one thing that I think is important to understand is it's kind of hard to measure recidivism, because it's hard to know how to measure it. Are we talking about new arrests? Are we talking about people who are compliant with treatment? What are we looking at? But the individual I talked to in Potawatomi County said about a third of their graduates are excelling. They're not having new arrests or commission of crimes. They're compliant with their treatment. They're doing really, really well in life. And she described them as excelling. So an additional 1/3, she said, are not committing new crimes and having new arrests. They're not being hospitalized, and they seem to be compliant with their treatment, but she didn't view them as excelling in life. And then there was a third that weren't doing well, that were committing new arrests, and weren't necessarily compliant with treatment. So depending on how you look at it, you can view that as 2/3 of the graduates in that program being successful.
Have you spoken with any of our legislators? There's so many changes going on with mental health and the state taking it over, and this is all being funded through DHS. Have you checked anything there?
I haven't spoken with legislators about it. The information I've received in talking to the participants in the other mental health courts that are already operating was that when they're able to get something going and started, they feel like they've got momentum going, and it's easier for them to go ahead and get money from another source. And so that's part of what I think would be beneficial in getting this started. And I think that has proven true with our drug court, because that was unfunded, but for 5-6 years, they worked really, really hard. And then they were finally able to get that federal grant. And the other thing I would add, Mr. Chairperson, besides the cost savings, which would include things like less cost to law enforcement, less people in jail and prison, which results in a cost savings, more people who would presumably be employed and have insurance, less money spent in hospitals and on that mental health treatment. I think it would also improve the quality of life of our citizens. It would improve the quality of life of those individuals who are struggling with mental illness. And it would also improve the community of life of our community in general, because if we have more productive citizens and people who are able to hold down a job and not commit crimes, that's going to help the rest of us. And I would also just view this as something that's the right thing to do to help individuals struggling with mental health. Certainly, it was one of the areas that the American Rescue Plan indicated we could spend money on, was helping individuals with mental illness as a result of the pandemic. Thank you, sir.
Anything else?
I like this project. When I was running for supervisor, that was one of the questions that kept coming up. What can we do here in Marshall County to improve mental health that we deal with here in Marshall County? And I guess I view this as a very black and white way that the county can step forward and help these folks. And we're using federal dollars here to do this, so it's a bit of a win-win.
Okay.
This is just for 1 year though.
Just 1 year.
Yeah. What's your plans then after this year?
So my hope would be to get started and establish a program that is running effectively and efficiently, and then get funds elsewhere, whether that's a federal grant or some other source. But it has worked for the drug court. I know it worked for the city's impact program. Their city council funded it, and they were able to get some grant funding after a year. And so there are other individuals on the team who I know would be willing to help look for other sources of funding after a year.
Would CICS have any opportunity to work with you in this regard also?
That would be my hope and my intention to get them involved.
That has become a state deal where DHS is paying. That comes from them. They're responsible for that. I guess what I'm wondering, would CICS be willing to start on it now?
That's a great question. I'd be happy to talk to them about that. Or if one of you has a contact.
I can, yeah.
Bill is our representative on that board for mental health for the region.
I'd like to do that. That's their deal. And they're willing to do those things. Let me work on that. I think we need a program that if this is going to work and then continue it, there's no need of doing it for 1 year if it's going to work. So if we can get in with CICS in this regard and have this continue, then I think that would be a much better deal for what you're trying to do. So I'd like to sit this thing down just for a little bit, table if we may, and see if CICS can help us on this. And I will get back to you.
Sir.
And,
Are there parts of this that CICS couldn't be involved in? Or can they?
Well, I don't know if they would pay the public defender contract or the probation contract. I don't know.
I don't know if they would do that
Short
either.
Yeah. I mean, they have substantial dollars. We went into the region with a $1.6 million balance and it's kind of been sucked up. And now the state has latched onto that. I look at this a little bit different with the state handling mental health, DHS, and the judicial branch. I feel this is something that if it has merit, and I'm not saying in one way or another that it doesn't, because I believe it does. You know, if we can look at the amount of individuals that the sheriff has to house in his facility out there, and what percentage would you say are there because of mental health issues?
I'd say there's at least 40% of the current population that's on some type of mental health treatment plan, medications. There's right now, it's a waiting period. We have one individual to be evaluated by POC at Oakdale. We have a 4-month waiting period to get that in to be seen. So obviously, what we have to monitor is the progression of that individual. We want to make sure that they are still maintaining their mental health. We don't want to see that digression just because they're being housed in a facility. That's a difficult task with some individuals. So it's at least a 4 months, sometimes 6-month lead time for those individuals to be evaluated to be able to process for the judicial system.
We also have the same situation at juvenile detention. I represent us on that board up in Eldora. Vast majority of the kids that we have in juvenile detention have mental health issues. We do have facilities for them, and we can do advisories and we can do evaluations. But it's the treatment and getting the funding for it that we struggle with. Without question, there's a direct correlation between mental health and the judicial budget. For the life of me, I can't understand why the legislature isn't standing up and taking a position on this. Because it's a huge number and it's a huge burden on our society.
I should know by the end of the week.
Okay.
But this isn't something that's gonna go on, you know, I'll know, we'll talk about it. I'll get back to you.
Okay, so do you want to make a motion to table that one item?
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we table the mental health court, $229,000 as we look into it. And I'm not going to put a time on the table. It might be 1 week. We'll know.
Okay.
So,
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the table to table this issue. Any further discussion or comments? Roll call vote, please, Sherry.
Thompson,
Yes.
Slosson.
Yes.
Patton.
yes,
Be interesting to see what we find out. And why don't you chase that direction and I'll chase down our legislators with
Good.
Edler and Fisher and see what they're doing in the House and Senate side on this. So we've all got our marching orders. Next item on here is the auditor recorder election freedom votes, an additional $36.41. Nan, can you give us a brief explanation on that one?
This was additional shipping to get the items here.
Okay. Well, that's easy enough.
It was hard to convince the committee.
I bet it was a long discussion.
They were mean.
Okay.
You'd be surprised.
Yeah,
It
tough.
was fraudulent.
It's a tough group.
It is a tough
Entertain
group.
motions on this item, please.
Mr. Chair, I would make a motion to fund through the ARPA program, the auditor recorder election freedom votes.
Mr. Chairman, I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the $36.41 funding of the freedom votes from the auditor recorders. Any further discussion or none? Roll call vote, please, Sherry.
Thompson,
Yes.
Wallace,
Yes.
Patton,
Yes,
Motion carries. From the Board of Supervisors position, we have the utilities at the Orpheum from 10/1/21 through 9/30 of 22 for $27,000. Nan, you want to bring us up to this real quick?
Yes, this is, obviously, this is an estimate for that amount, but it appears that that will be a kind of the time frame of how long you will be utilizing the Orpheum. Obviously, if it's less time than that, then it would be less time for the utilities, and that would just go unspent. Currently, Iowa Valley is, we're just covering the utility costs there. We paid $1 rent for the location, and then we're covering those expenses, as well as Lucas is doing the snow removal there.
We entertain motions on this item, please.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we approve the Orpheum utilities for 27,000.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to fund the $27,000 out of ARPA for Orpheum utilities from 10/1/21 through 9/30 of 2022. Robert, did you pick up on that?
Yeah.
We just put a date on the end of when we're gonna move out of there, hopefully.
That is not a date. That is not a
Nothing,
date.
nothing could be happier
That is not.
for us than if we were out of that building on then, but that's, I just want to throw that one out there
I'd
just
like
for
it to
fun.
be earlier than that because COVID is over. Because we are utilizing that facility due to COVID and social distance.
If we could be out of there anytime, yes, and
That would be
that
great.
needs to be stated that the reason we went into Orpheum was to separate everybody because of COVID, to give the social distancing of 6 feet. And with COVID hopefully on the decline and non-mask wearing, we'll be able to maybe move out of there and get back into our own facilities, whether they're in the MAC building or in our newly refurbished courthouse. It would be absolutely tremendous.
If this
Okay.
number is bigger, can we come back to this and?
Mhm. Yeah,
And
similar
throw
to
in a
the
couple thousand.
$36.41.
Okay, and at the same time, if it's less,
We would just have that
Take
money
less.
remaining, and
Yeah,
yes, it would be less.
okay.
It would stay in there.
All right, we have a motion and a second on the table. Any further discussion or questions? Roll call vote, please, Sherry.
Thompson,
Yes.
Wallace.
Yes.
Patton,
Yes,
Motion carries. Also out of the Board of Supervisors is the court record scanning for $150,000. This is the scanning that we agreed to do with the court system of records that we've got housed elsewhere. We got them out of the courthouse, and once they're scanned, they can be shredded and destroyed and not moved back into extremely expensive real estate in the courthouse. Once they're gone, they are just plain gone.
The good news is this project has begun.
Yes.
They're picking up the
They're-
first 250 boxes on the 21st.
Yeah, but they're in process and they're planning, which is extremely exciting.
Did they go to another state? Do I remember?
Ohio.
Is that a state?
It's a stage.
Yeah. Stop it.
They're going
Levity.
off-site.
They're going
For certain.
off-site, and
They
that
don't have a university there.
we all also talked about it during the book scanning part and how didn't really want to let those books out of my site. So we're doing that on location differently than this is being done. But they are at the planning phases. This is something in your budget, but court scanning, when we originally got the ARPA money, it's definitely something that aids in COVID because you can look things up and you don't have to be standing right next to each other. With the new guidelines, it's definitely a legitimate expense for the county.
And we did work heavily with the state court system on this to get this done.
Yes, and the original agreement was we paid the first 150,000, which, initially didn't sound like the greatest deal when we thought the total was 250, but the last I heard it was pushing 400. So, but as long as they're getting it done, it's the right thing to do. Everyone
Yeah.
feels it.
Yep.
It's just getting it done, and they managed to get it done. So I think it's a great move forward.
Okay, we'll entertain motions on this item, please.
Mr. Chairman, I would move to approve the $150,000 for the court record scanning.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve this expenditure for court record scanning. Any further discussion or comments? Sherry, roll call vote, please.
Thompson,
Yes,
Slosser,
Yes.
Patton,
Yes.
item carries. Next on it is informational technology. This is a cloud backup server required for cyber insurance of 47,000. James?
Yeah, our cyber insurance company has been kind of leaning on us to further deepen our backup capabilities. This is a project we've been wanting to do for a while. The costs are finally becoming realistic. Also, it includes an enhancement to our existing on-site backup infrastructure. So it's one of those things that will help protect us from new and emerging cyber threats.
Entertain motions on this item, please.
Mr. Chair, I would make a motion to fund the cloud backup server required by cyber insurance.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on this item? Sherry, roll call vote, please.
Thompson,
Yes,
Slosser.
Yes.
Patton,
Yes.
motion carries. Secondary roads, this is radio and base units, an additional 13,624.24. We have Paul with us this morning.
We do.
Okay.
Hi
Paul,
there.
could- Oh,
Yeah, this is just the final number that we had for the radio quotes, and we had an initial estimate, but then we went through the equipment and we reduced the number of equipment that have the mobiles installed. We added a couple portables, and then we also had 5 more base stations than we had in our initial quote, because we have a base station at every one of our outlying sheds, and we also have a base station in the sign shop. So that brings our base station total to 7 as far as the ones that are, plugged in and used inside buildings.
okay. Entertain motions on this item, please.
Mr. Chairman, I would move to approve the $13,624.24 for the radio and base units for our secondary roads.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve. Any further discussion or comments?
I wanted to note that 254,925.79 was approved on September 14th of 21.
Okay.
Previously, this is just the remainder.
Give me that number again.
The 254,925.79.
And those were radios and for all of secondary roads?
All of secondary roads, including base units. They need base units, of course, out of the shop, at the office,
Okay.
and all the outlying sheds, and then radios for all the units.
So this takes care of all the county radios.
All the county secondary roads radios.
What about conservation? They're not a part of this then, obviously. So have they asked for?
Just to remind.
You'd probably be on P25 for law enforcement, I would assume. Do
Do we need additional stuff for you guys?
I think we're okay right now.
Okay,
We need 2 additional ratings for the positions.
boy, if you could bring that up at the next ARPA meeting, that'd be great. Yeah. We've worked real hard to continue to use these funds as much as possible for capital needs that are going to be on the backs of the taxpayers in future years. And anything we can do to use these federal fundings to help out our local folks, I'm all for. Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve 13,624.24 for radios and base units additional for secondary roads. Any further comments or questions? There being none, roll call vote, please, Sherry.
Thompson,
Yes,
Slosson.
Yes.
Patton,
Yes.
got it. Motion carries. Lucas, sheriff's windows out the office, $1 million.
$1 million.
It's a lot of windows.
It's a big building. Yeah, this is a planned window upgrade for the 1969 building, the admin building out at the jail complex.
All three
So,
floors.
all three. Well, there are actually some basement windows as well in egress. Yeah.
Okay.
So we've done pretty good with ARPA funds out there. We've done the
We have.
HVAC, we've done the restroom,
Control board.
control board,
Yep.
and
This
windows.
is one of the final pieces of the puzzle here to really bring that building up to where it needs to be useful long-term.
Excellent. I'll entertain motions on this item, please.
Mr. Chair, I would make a motion to fund the sheriff office windows through the ARPA program for the sum of $1 million.
Mr. Chairman, I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second on the floor to approve $1 million expenditures for funding for office sheriff windows. Any further discussion or comments? There being none, roll call vote, please.
Thompson,
Yes.
Slosson.
Yes.
Patton,
Yes.
Okay. Next on the list is a gazebo, 12-foot by 12-foot for the Freedom Rock out to the American Legion for $12,500. Entertain motions on this item.
Mr. Chair, I would make a motion to fund the gazebo for the Freedom Rock, 12-foot by 12-foot for $12,500.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman, I'd second that.
we have a motion and a second to fund the gazebo at the Freedom Rock for $12,000. Any further discussion?
I have a concern about this. The Veterans Affairs, this is really not, I don't think part of their program. Is something they would like to see done. I think this needs to be more of a community organization. Way of paying for this. That's my thought anyway.
I'm thinking along the same lines. I'd like to see this funded locally. Just doing a fundraiser. I would even be happy to be a part of that fundraising.
I would also, and I'll be happy to join you on leading the charge on fundraising for both of these items. Work with the Legion commander out there, Randy Kessler, our Veterans Affairs people. We do need to get that gazebo over the Freedom Rock to protect it
Yes.
from the elements and the ultraviolet rays and things. It's not a huge amount. And I think we would have absolutely no trouble raising these funds.
I grew up with Darwin Judge, so that rock is pretty special to me.
Absolutely. We got Judge Park. For those that don't know, Darwin was one of the last people killed in the Vietnam War. When we were leaving Saigon, it was him and another Marine that were killed by mortar fire in the very last day in Saigon. Our generation won't forget those days. All right, I guess we've expressed our sentiments on that.
Well, we've got a motion.
We have a motion and a second on the table.
We can go ahead and vote for that and we vote it up, we vote it down, and if we vote it down, we've already talked about what we're gonna do.
Okay. Then Sherry, roll call vote, please.
Thompson,
No.
Slosson,
No,
Patton,
No,
Okay. The next item is Ultra Veterans Affairs black chain link fence surrounding the F4 Phantom jet fighter at the Legion for $28,200. I'll entertain motions on, so we can get this on the table for discussion.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know. I'm thinking the same thing on this. I think this needs to be a community thing rather than us. Do we want to? I guess we can vote it down.
Your motion can be to deny.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, I would move to deny the black chain link fence for the F4 Phantom Fighter.
And I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to deny. Any further discussion? I know we already covered some of our thoughts on this. Anything else? No. Roll call vote, please, Sherry.
Thompson,
I vote yes to deny.
Clausen,
Yes to deny.
Tatman,
Yeah, yes to deny.
Okay. Next item on here is the Legrand Township for radios. It's a 50% request for $16,099.26. Just for clarification, their bank balance in the Legrand Township is $113,669.15. Entertain motions on this item.
Mr. Chair, I would make a motion to fund through the ARPA project $16,099.26 for the Township of Legrand.
I'd second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the table. Discussion?
Could you go what the balance was on that, Rhonda, what their bank balance was being held for?
Right, so basically what we did is I asked each of the townships, so there was only 2 townships that did this, and the next one we're going to be talking about in a minute. But we needed an explanation as to their bank balance. So I'm just going to go ahead and read this in full. I'd like to send an explanation as to why we're asking for assistance with the new communication system when we have quite a bit of money in the bank. To start, $23,000 of that balance belongs to the owned and non-owned cemeteries. The remainder is the fire and EMS balance. We've been saving for several years to replace an ailing tanker and to do some major repairs on our ambulance. We would really appreciate any assistance. Bless you. We would really, that bless you, isn't it?
Appreciate it.
Knee-jerk reaction. We would really appreciate any assistance you could give us in transferring to the new communication system. Let me know if you have any questions. And that's from Rhonda Hendricks from the Legrand Township Club.
Did they have a breakdown as to how much was for the cemeteries and other items?
The 23,000 that was in reserve for the cemeteries.
23,000 was
Yeah.
reserved. Okay.
23,000 was in reserve for their cemeteries, which would have taken them down. I have to do the quick math here real quick.
Roughly 90.
90,000.
Yeah. And then the rest of that, they've been saving for several years for that. So what we did to get to that number is we took their percentage that the township, and remember, the township can't apply for the ARPA funds, so they don't have that ability, only the cities can. So their portion of the radios is actually $32,198.52. We have that to get to the amount that we have listed for approval.
Did the city of Legrand apply for ARPA funding?
The city of Legrand, and they have, I think, 49% of those radios that they have to purchase. This amount here is only the 51%, the township, that's the township's burden. The total cost of the radios for that area are $63,134.35.
Those percentages are usually in a 20/80 agreement for the fire station, the fire department gets it split between however many townships and the cities.
Right.
Did the city attempt to get a grant?
Yeah, the city did, I believe, get their grant, and they owe the 49% of that $63,134. They're not asking for any money. It's just the township that is. And they owe the 51%, which is the $32,198.52.
when we first started this thing 2 years ago, the supervisor said they would take the responsibility of putting up the tower. And we asked that the fire departments and I assume this is what we're talking about here, the Legrand Township Fire Department.
It's the Legrand Fire Department, so there's percentages that are through that 28E that they purchase. So in order to pay for everything, Legrand, the city of Legrand that was able to get the ARPA fund, they owe 49% of that total or of any cost.
Yeah,
Then there's the township, and they owe the 51%, but townships weren't able to apply for ARPA grants, so they did not receive any funding.
yeah. But the town had, you got, backing up,
Mhm.
okay, we had the grant that they got. Well, how much was their grant that they got?
For Legrand, and I don't have exact numbers, but I can give you an estimate based on this old document. Look, the city of Legrand. $136,207.63.
So is that part of their bank balance then?
No, this is completely different. The balance that I read off to you, that's only for the township.
Okay,
I don't know what the city of LeGrand has.
And in keeping with Bill's thoughts, we did agree that we would do the towers, but not the radios. I would like to take both of these items, the Legrand Township and the Timber Creek Township request for funding, and table them until we get to the end of this project and see if there's dollars left. There's been so many changes in what we can spend this money on. We have a huge responsibility to paving in the Wolf Lake area that when the ARPA funds first came out, we were unable to use those funds toward paving, and now we can. Keeping along with our thoughts of using these dollars for capital improvements that save property tax dollars later on down the road, I'd like to look at using as many of the funds as we can as possible towards paving in that project. I did talk with Paul Geilenfeld, our county engineer, and he's putting together some preliminary numbers as to what he feels it would take. Paul, you're still on with us this morning?
Yes, I am.
Approximately, and I know this is early because you haven't put anything out for bid or let, but what do you think that's gonna run?
Well, my initial thoughts was something around 2 million, but I tell you, with materials costs, the way they've been going, and bid prices have been completely unpredictable lately, other than they're just going up. So we'll be able to learn more from this spring's lettings as far as what material, what paving costs are. But I'm going to look at the cost of just a remove and replace of the pavement without doing, grade rework anywhere out there. One thing to keep in mind on the radios, guys, too, though, is the reason, like, I've got mine on order, is it's likely going to be, 4 or 5 months before these radios show up. So if you wait until the end to order these radios for the townships, it will likely be 2023 before they get radios in hand for their departments.
Okay.
Let me make a comment if I could. This radio project is a heavy load for the townships. I was a township trustee for the grant. There just weren't dollars fund anything like this, so. And I believe they're maxed out on the levy, close.
it's interesting. Some townships got money and they said, we're not gonna borrow any money. We're just gonna pay for them.
Yeah.
And then we got townships who don't have any money. I don't know why, Steve.
Well, we've got a few townships out there where there's been some extremely benevolent individuals that have stepped up.
Legrand has, I
Yeah.
believe, 4 cemeteries that they have to keep up and maintain. And even that's a tough deal for them. So
Are
So
they
that-
for
owned?
what it's worth,
Are they owned cemeteries then for LeGrand?
they are.
And when you look at replacement of emergency vehicles and repair, that's huge. You know, some of those townships may have already done that or aren't to that point. So that's something else to look at. They've got, what, 100,000 almost, 90,000 that they've been saving for probably forever because they have pieces falling apart. So that's another big part of that.
And that will disappear very, very quickly when they're looking at emergency
Oh, yeah.
vehicles.
And I'm sure Timber Creek is probably can echo the very same comments.
Our tanker went out in January. They're looking at used. They thought they'd spend 40 to 50,000. Prices are coming back around 100,000. 250,000. The only thing we're at is we haven't maxed our asking price. We can do that going forward. But then
You mean your levy? Yeah, okay.
So you do have an ability to fund it through the levy.
Yeah.
Very
Going
slowly.
back to the price.
And then keep in mind the 90,000 that they originally had, there's an additional 17 because they've got to pay the other half of that. So, I mean, that's even less money to.
Okay, we have a motion and it's any further discussion.
The motion at this point is to table. Is that what it was?
I would like to table both.
I think the motion was to approve.
But we have a motion on the table to approve. Okay.
That's what I wrote down.
Let's take care of the motion on the table. Or the motion to approve on the table first. Any further discussion on that? Roll call vote, Sherry?
Thompson,
No.
Lawson,
Yes.
No. But then with that,
With that, I would like to come right back and make a motion to table both of these items until a further date, when we can get a better handle on what we're gonna have left for funding and looking at possibility of spending that funding on paving for Wolf Lake.
I would move the table.
Okay, Dave, did you go through and then that was the second?
Well, typically the chair doesn't make a motion, so
Bill made the
let's
motion.
put Bill down as motion.
And I'll say.
We have a motion and a second to table. Any further discussion? There being none, roll call vote, please.
Thompson,
Yes.
Lawson,
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
I should just get the information that the LeGrand Township is asking for the max fire levy.
Okay.
On their budget for the FY 23.
speaking of information, seeing as how we skipped ahead on item number 8, did you get a text back from Whitaker Farms?
I did. Was this tabling for both LeGrand and Timber Creek?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I'm gonna read my text here, but I need to correct my. Okay, the location, they do have they have a LP tank out there. The location it's in, there is some concern about where it would need to be. You know, through lines, through, what did he say here? Trench across the driveway, water lines, electric and phone to cross. So I think we need to have some additional, at least converse. It makes them nervous. Both Kevin and Justin said there's a lot of concern about getting to that other LP tank with where the generator needs to sit.
We have completed all of the ARPA funds. Do you want to go back and entertain motions on the P25 radio project in the amount of $66,500. That is for generator and LP tank.
The other piece of this thing, of this change order, I do want to note is, it's noted right on here that it will not affect the final acceptance of the P25 network project.
Okay.
So I think they're wanting to kind of split these two off when we thought it was a 6-month lead time that fell into the timing much nicer, but the 53 weeks obviously
Well,
puts it out their way.
you know, we've already approved a couple things this morning for $1 amount. And if it comes in less than that, that's fine. We just can't go over it. The same thing can be done here. We could approve it for this dollar amount. And if they come up with a solution as far as trenching these lines in from point A to point B that's acceptable, it
And
would
we don't
just,
need
it would
the
just be
LP.
less.
We would have a change order that, yes, doesn't include that, but you all can approve this at the highest and.
Just thoughts.
Some more information, guys. If I was just kind of curious, so I reached out to Rich in my office to find out if there was any issues with having something else hooked onto the same LP tank as your generator. And he said if there is a large draw item, like if you're heating a hog facility with that same tank that you're trying to run a generator on, there may not be the flow to fuel the generator if they're both running at the same time. He said many times they have troubles with being able to get the right flow to a house if there's a large draw out on the farm that is preventing the fuel, just the flow that you can get of the vapor.
Okay.
So that might be one of the reasons why it's also being quoted. That might be something for the people with the generator, though, that may say you can't put a large draw on the same tank with this generator. I don't know.
You know, we're trying to save maybe $5,000 to $6,000 here by going through all this conversation. Maybe it's just not worth it.
Well, and like Dave said, you can approve the full thing, and if we get it
It may
figured
turn
out,
out later it's not necessary.
Okay.
I think we can at least ask the question. It's free to ask.
Yeah.
I'll entertain motions on this item. We've had considerable discussion.
I'd move that we approve the $66,500.51 for the P25 radio project order for the Whitaker Farms.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second on the table to approve the P25 radio project for $66,500.51. Any further discussion or comments? There being none, Sherry, roll call vote, please.
Wilson,
Yes,
Walter,
Yes.
Patton,
Yes.
motion carries. Okay. Bouncing on to item number 10. This is something that Bill previously tabled, and we need to probably come back to this. This was the $253,000 request to fund the enhanced drug court that they have since received a grant from, was it Second Judicial?
Second Judicial has a $550,000 grant for drugs. And
Okay.
I
And they can't get both, to my understanding.
Yes, sir.
So Bill, if my memory serves me correct, you were the one that tabled this item, so by Robert's Rules of Orders, you need to untable it.
Mr. Chairman, I would remove from the table this motion, please.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to remove this item from the table. Any further discussion? There being none, Sherry, roll call vote, please.
Thompson,
Yes.
Walter.
Yes.
Patton,
Yes.
Now, let's look at what we're going to do with this previous request, seeing as how we've had change of information. I'll entertain motions on that.
But it looks to me like at at this point, we don't need to do this. Would you feel that way?
Well, the request was made. Do we just need to
To
deny it?
If I deny it, yeah, let's,
Okay,
Okay,
so I'll entertain a motion to deny.
I would make a motion then to deny.
I second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the table to deny the previous request for $253,060 to fund the drug court. Any further discussion or comment? Roll call vote, please. Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, item number 11. Do we have an update on the siren project?
We will be meeting, our committee will be meeting tomorrow at 11 o'clock. In the meantime, the grant coordinator at the state level said that if the county and the city went together for their application, they would have a better chance of being approved by FEMA because it'd be a countywide project, and they like to see countywide projects. The only thing that would entail then, cities would still pay their portion, they'd still pay their 15%, county would still pay their 15% of their project. But there would have to be an approval for the Board of Supervisors to be that conduit to go ahead and let this committee write that grant as a county. And then if you approve that as Board of Supervisors, then you would have to have some type of an MRA, MOU with those cities that also want to be in that project so that you can take care of that payment part. And then that man would have to be in on that too. They would still be responsible. So the county, $360,000 was your max when you pay for that, and then you get reimbursed basically your 85% of that. Same thing would happen with the city. So if they wanted, if State Center wanted 2 sirens, they would pay their max 60,000. We're estimating a siren at 30,000 piece. They would pay that, and then they would just conduit through the county. So they would pay you that way.
Have you had any cities that have requested to join us?
Yes, all of them would like to that are wanting to do the project. They said if it means getting the project funded, they would love to do it. So I'm still working with them to see, there's a couple that are still on the fence whether they want to apply or not. There's several that already have their NOIs, their notice of interest in. I told them to go ahead and do their notice of interest so that we're not getting behind. And if we decide as the county to make it one project, they'll just withdraw their notice of interest and we'll put it on to one project.
Well, I'd sure like to see us do it collectively. We don't have a financial stake in this. The individual cities have theirs, and we've already made a commitment for our 15%.
Yeah, and you would just have to do whatever, memorandum of agreement for the payment.
We're just going to be a conduit, whether it be, I don't know if we need a 2080 agreement with this or just a memorandum of understanding.
Yeah.
Either one, whatever we got to do, I would say. Yeah, we probably should. Okay.
And that would be up to you. So I guess there is possible action on that. So if you want to take action on that and approve it, it's up to you. Then we can move forward as a committee. We'll be moving one way or the other tomorrow to make our decision. The mapping's done. GIS got me that this last week. So we have the population density areas, which is pretty much what we thought it would be, but that gives us our up to 12 sirens that we were going to do as a unincorporated project. And then we will finalize with all of the cities and then bring those cities on board to that committee that are committed and have their NOIs in so that they can start working with that committee with the same vendors, that we can get all of our mapping done with the vendors. Move forward as one project. As one project, it will be much easier to do, even though it's a little more load on that committee. The cities will be then sitting on that committee. So what won't be just the county and the representatives that we have now is Rhonda, Steve, myself, and then Marie Toms and the representative from over at Wolf Lake. So, yeah, there you go.
Steve, you've been spearheading this project from the standpoint of the supervisors representing on us. Would you please make a motion on this?
I would be glad to. I would make a motion then that we partner with our cities in Marshall County that want to participate in this through memorandum of understanding. Let me ask one question. If I could.
Sure.
Did you say we all have to pay the full amount at the front
It's
end?
most like any
And then it's-
grant, yeah. that they would-
Was it an issue with the?
I talked to Nan about that and she said, depending on where it fell, it should work out, right, correct?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
okay.
and it's a lot of a timing thing. I don't see that it's going to happen probably before June 30.
Yeah, I don't either,
We
because
need
by
it
the
to
time
the
we
end of
get
next
this
fiscal
written.
year.
Right.
We can do it.
And our understanding from the supervisor's portion is if we don't get the grant, we don't do the project.
Yeah, well, we don't
Then
do
we
it as
have
a
another-
combo project, and
Then we
and
have
that's
another
something
direction.
else we will make sure that at the committee meeting, and the cities are aware of that, but that we do have as a county a backup plan. We already approved ARPA funds if we don't get the hazard mitigation
No.
grant.
We've not approved them. It's on the list.
Correct, that we have the money in there, correct.
Mhm.
So we've already been told by the board of supervisors that we can go through the ARPA funds if we don't get hazard mitigation, but that would not include cities if we went
Right.
that direction.
Right.
So we will make that clear. I've already told them that, but we'll make that clear at the committee meetings.
Did I give you enough of a motion there, Mr. Chair? Did that
So
make
I-
enough sense to?
I've typed out Solosic move to partner with participating cities to proceed with the grant application.
Is that satisfactory? Is that-
Yeah, as a countywide project, I would just say, yeah. With cities being responsible for their own.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'd second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the table. Any further discussion or comment? There being none, Sherry, roll call vote, please.
Thompson,
Yes.
Solosic.
Yes.
Patton.
Yes,
Okay, moving right along to item 12 on our agenda this morning is public forum. This is a time set aside for the public to make comments on topics of county business other than those listed on this agenda. No action will be taken on any of these topics brought up in public forum. Anybody got anything for the good of the cause? Lucas, you're lit up like a Christmas tree on that one.
Yeah, okay. I have a couple things to talk about. Number one is in the interior of the courthouse, we are refinishing a lot of the old historic doors. With that, in the base bit of the project, the refinishing of the casework around the doors or the wainscot that runs up to the door was not in the project in all places to be finished to the same level. So we reached out to Bryholtz, our general contractor, and said, what would the cost be to finish the balance of the woodwork? And that came back a pretty big number. And yeah, pretty big numbers, $417,000. With that, since we got that number late last week, we've started to brainstorm, okay, what's the breakout further on that? So we asked the breakout, so if we encompassed basically all of the woodwork that was to remain in the courthouse. So existing windows was $168,000. To refinish the balance of the wainscoting was $142,000 and door frames was $103,000. With that, we started the initial conversations of, okay, what can we strip out of this? You know, what random window in a room on the 5th floor isn't going to touch anything else that we don't have to refinish. So we started a little bit on that as well, but we also came to the realization that Iowa is by law a color match state. So when we start to think about, we needed to refinish doors in the courthouse that were an insurance scope. Now everything that door touches should be an insurance responsibility. So we're going down that path to start with to see how much we can get our insurance company to cover, because I mean, essentially the concern is at this point is if we don't finish the wood around what is potentially a brand new looking door, then it just sticks out like a sore thumb, and the public's gonna walk in and say, you spent 4 years and it looks like this. And I don't think that's the situation anybody wants to be in. So we're doing our due diligence on it, and I'm pretty confident we can get EMC to pay for a significant portion of that. So I'll keep you apprised as to what happens.
I
More to
got a-
come.
I
Yeah.
got a full house cited on that law
Same thing for my house with the
on a
direction. So
hailstorm.
Old
It's-
Chinese proverb, the nail that sticks up is the one that gets pounded down.
Okay.
They will stick out like a sore thumb.
Yeah.
They-
Oh, absolutely.
And we kind of showed you the doors that one day after, I think one of our last.
Oh, they're
meetings up there.
unreal.
They're
They look
gorgeous.
gorgeous, but
They're
putting it next to
gorgeous.
the wood that wasn't going to be touched,
yeah.
it doesn't look very good. And that's when we went ahead and got these quotes.
And the last time that woodwork was touched was back in the
70s.
70s.
Yeah,
mid
70s. And honestly, it was always a bit of contention with me because in the 70s, they didn't seal any of the woodwork. So it was all just a varnish finish. But I think that's actually going to save us a ton of money this go round because that finish doesn't have to be stripped off. They can just stain right over the old and then seal it in. So we'll be in, count your stars that we're not in that situation. So there's number one good thing to chew on. The other is I met with OPN architectural firm yesterday on initial talks for the upgrades at the sheriff's office. So we've kicked that project off and should start to see some
On the windows.
the Windows control board and HVAC. Also, we met with Rhonda about the secondary piece at that location. So my goal is to roll that all under one project. So we have bid documents and we have everything, kind of the whole upgrade encompassing together. So that's the goal on that. I am going to instruct the bid process to kind of break out the individual projects in alternates so we can capture what we're actually spending on each portion of it. So I think that'll be helpful.
So I know in talking to you and Sheriff Phillips, the original dollar amount we approved for the control panel, the actual replacement was substantially less.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's going to be other areas where what we're going to spend is going to be a lot
Yeah,
more.
yeah. So we'll have some extra funds on that infrastructure, but there's also along with that, we can do some camera upgrades. We can do control room upgrades, which hasn't been touched since 2000 when the building was built. So there's some other things we can do with those funds as well that'll really help that whole campus out there.
Anybody got anything else for the good of the order? There being none, we're going to move on to item 13, which is adjournment. The next regular session is March 1st, 2022 at 9:05 a.m. All business to be acted upon at that session should be submitted to the County Auditor Recorder's Office or the Board of Supervisors Office by Wednesday, February 3rd, 2022 at 12 p.m. There being no further business to come before the board, this meeting is adjourned at 10:23 a.m. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Have